Hey, what's going on? JD here. This is the Daily JD. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share the video, all that kind of good stuff. Also, hit that bell button below to make sure that you get the notifications when we do, in fact, go live. As well, follow me on Twitter at Pain Inc. I always tweet out before I go live every single day, 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, Monday through Friday. And just a reminder, we are a Patreon supported stream, so if you want to head over to Patreon and support us like our other supporters do, Mr. Matt Mort, Nick Samurai Fingers, and Reviewy McReviewface, all their links are down below. You can check those guys out and check out their channels as well, because they are all fellow YouTubers. Good to see you, Pete. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you so much. So today we've got some things to talk about in the YouTube realm. I thought it was a bit of a slow news day, but just like your drunk uncle, just when you don't expect it, he kicks open the door with something that can fill a conversation, and that's what YouTube did today again. So essentially, for those of you who have been watching Twitter, you may have noticed some tweets going out from a fair few people, as well as people that are in the YouTube Calgary community, that essentially YouTube is going in and running basically a test, as they would call it, and substituting your custom made thumbnails with a randomly generated one. So it's interesting that YouTube has essentially gone in, and you may have spent hours generating your thumbnail, carefully planning what you were going to put in there, uploaded it, all that kind of stuff, and YouTube has been essentially taking that and replacing it with its own generated thumbnail. They're basically running it as a test, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. The fact that they would go in to your stuff and basically, without your permission or asking you to do it, just basically start changing things. As we all know, thumbnails are, heavily tied to basically click-through rate, and that basically, going to a sort of auto-generated thumbnail tends not to work. I know the vast majority of screen caps that YouTube picks for me are not generally the best, and that's why almost every thumbnail on this channel has been somewhat custom made. So it's very interesting that they've taken this approach. Obviously, people very upset by the prospect of this, calling YouTube out. Why would you do this? Why would you do things without my permission? All that kind of stuff. YouTube's response was basically along the lines of that they're only doing it with 0.3% of the videos. On the surface, that sounds like a very small number of videos that they're doing it, and when you think about it, it's like, oh, it's only 0.3%. Chances are it's not happening to me. The interesting part with that is 0.3% of 5 billion views a day is about 15 million videos are having their thumbnails changed at any given time. And it's interesting because I first caught wind of this actually through Reviewy McReviewface's Twitter. He'd sort of made a comment along those lines, and somebody like Reviewy, who goes in and hand draws every single thumbnail that he's done for a while, it's kind of probably infuriating from that perspective that essentially they're going in and just taking it out and putting a random screenshot from your video as part of a test. I'm not sure what the logic behind that is. I mean, maybe they are working on the algorithm for screen selection or something along those regards, but I would think there would be enough videos out there where people just upload them and don't upload a custom thumbnail that they could play with that algorithm in itself. So, I mean, again, completely makes no sense to me whatsoever why they would do that and why they would infuriate people to no end, basically in a sense, kind of stealing your time, because if you're putting the time and effort, and again, I'll use Reviewy as an example, you're putting in a few hours doing a thumbnail, and at the end of the day, that is just completely discarded. I don't know, how that is even remotely fair to that individual. A lot of us take our channel seriously. We try to put the best content forward we can. We try to make the best thumbnails that we possibly can, and we put time and effort into these things. And essentially, at the end of the day, if I'm going to put in time and you just randomly take it away, I don't feel that's very fair to the creator unless they have signed up for something along those lines, saying, hey, yeah, I'll be part of that. I'm fine with that. But that's not the case of what happened. I don't feel that, it is a super, super cool move on, the heels of YouTube. Essentially, they're kind of taking liberties. And again, sort of speaks to some of the discussions that we have sort of repeatedly, that, when a company like YouTube and you're putting your content there, when they do things like this, you have zero control over. You can say that you don't like it, all those kind of things, but they're going to ultimately do what they do in the end, and you are very much subjected to their rules, whatever they make, and however they choose to do it, and they can just do it just at the drop of the hat. So kind of interesting that they decided to take this approach. Again, for the past year, it seems that creators have sort of just been slammed over and over again. And they seem to be taking more than they are giving in a lot of ways. So kind of an interesting strategy. Again, upsetting a lot of users and driving a lot of users away. Peter says, hi, I'm paranoid in what YouTube does nowadays. I think a lot of people are. I think a lot of bigger creators especially are. I think when your entire livelihood revolves around it, and they keep on doing things like this, people are going to become increasingly weary and look for other avenues. And the great example of that is Philip DeFranco, how he continually tries to pull his audience off to some sort of space that he 100% controls. And that is a smart move, because ultimately at the end of the day, if YouTube implodes or they do something completely off the wall, I think Philly D will be okay, seeing as he is one of the higher ranked guys that have Patreon support. So, I mean, it's good to start cultivating that early on, I believe. So wait, they are taking away our custom thumbnails, like everyone. So basically, just to sort of reiterate what happened, is they are experimenting with replacing custom thumbnails with random screenshots or their thumbnails in your videos. It's happening to 0.3% of the videos that are on YouTube. So if you go take a look through your stream, you might see maybe 1 or 2 videos that have had the thumbnails removed and replaced with something else. They're basically doing that, and there's no real other justification other than that they're running a test. No indication how long that test is going to run for, or what the purpose of that test is whatsoever. So, and for absolutely everybody. So like I said, 5 billion views a day on YouTube. So about 15 million of those videos that are seen, they're going to have a different thumbnail than their creator uploaded. So very, very interesting. Nick says there's a lot of clickbait type thumbnails though. And maybe that's exactly what they're going for. Maybe they are trying to remove those. Maybe they are going to look at doing something, videos with a high click-through rate and a poor watch time. Maybe they're going to look at changing that in order to direct traffic in a certain way. That is a distinct possibility. Now that you mention it, what they could be trying to gain out of sort of this test. So, there are a lot of videos out there that have a high click-through percentage, but the watch time is very, very short. Usually in terms of clickbait, if you look at the new beta studio and you go into the back end and you start looking at the information and clicking on the question mark icons that explain sort of what things are, it will talk and it will specifically mention thumbnails and it will mention clickbait. So, I mean, that is a distinct possibility that they are looking to, sort of make sure that the best videos are the most attractive. Again, controlling their environment and, trying to direct people a certain way. But, again, it's kind of unfair on the creators. Like, again, if I'm to spend, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour doing thumbnails every day, that time is basically taken away from me. It's, completely unfair to sort of remove that from my control, especially when, your channel is your image, it is your, your creation, all those kind of things. It's kind of, a little bit of, sort of the overseer kind of, government control kind of stuff that everybody really, really probably is going to super hate on, for absolutely sure. Nick says, I want to start up my own video hosting service. Anyone want to sign up? And I mentioned that, I think I mentioned it yesterday. I talked about the OTT system, and if anybody wanted to kind of sit down and discuss things and how that would look like and what that looks like, absolutely, there's definitely inroads there. I know where and how to get there and all that kind of stuff. It's just a bit of an interesting process. And again, you know, things like that. I mean, obviously, one of the advantages of YouTube is it has a large user base, and those people are there watching videos, and it's a lot easier for them to kind of stumble upon your stuff on YouTube than it is on a different platform. But that being said, doesn't mean that you can't start building something from the ground up. And, you know, what I was looking at specifically is basically, you know, videos as well as applications that cross-pollinate across things like Xbox, PlayStation Network, on Samsung TVs, all those kind of things. Those are all completely doable and a lot easier than people might realize. It's just knowing sort of where to go. So, yeah, I mean, I know myself absolutely interested. I'm always interested in kind of grassroots, base root things and building things up. You know, that's kind of has always sort of been my MO. So yeah, I mean, that's sort of the news for YouTube. What YouTube has done really super bad today and is pissing people off. At the end of the day, like, it is a small percentage. You know, you're probably going to see one or two of your videos if you have a large back catalog that might happen to, and that is sort of it. You know, in a sense as well, YouTube coming out with some other stuff. They're basically indicating today that in the next week, if you are waiting for your monetization to be turned on, that should absolutely happen. They're saying that they've got a full team in place. It took them a while to get up to speed. They are all fully trained, and basically moving forward, there should not be the backlog there has been for these several months since basically changing the rules for the first and second time. They figure in the next week. Initially, they had said June 30th. So they basically have 2 days to kind of keep the June promise for me, because I am still waiting. I have not been reviewed as of yet. But as well, they've said everything will be cleared up next week. They are going from most subscribers to least subscribers. So, you know, to be honest, I am like just over that. I think I'm at 1,066, and it fluctuates up and down 2 or 3 a day. We're kind of hovering at a neutral kind of place at the moment. The watch time hours obviously going up. I think, you know, we're at like almost 4,200 now, thanks to you guys, and thanks for subscribing as well. So I will let you know as soon as it happens, and if it doesn't happen, I will let you know as well. So I mean, it's good to know. I think, you know, when you are small, you know, that kind of information is important to realize that, you know, this is how long I can potentially wait, because their channel does say essentially that once you've hit that mark, it'll take a week to review, and that's definitely not the case. We hit that on May 31st. Today being, I believe, June 28th. I'm very bad with dates, and I'm very bad with days because it all kind of blends. I live off a calendar that just tells me basically you have to be here at this time and do this, and that's how I kind of think. I get all my stuff kind of spoon-fed by Siri, so there you go. So if you have any questions or anything like that, by all means, throw them in the chat. But that's it essentially for news for YouTube. That's what's going on in their realm of the world. You know, unless you want to start getting into things like Rice Gum, who is the new Logan Paul in a sense, who went to another country and basically caused a big uproar with, you know, statements going to China and doing all that kind of stuff. But, you know, I don't want to dwell on that too much. The guy gets too much publicity as far as I'm concerned, considering his past record as well. So we will move forward from that. So I'm going to jump back a couple days. We talked about working for free. I'd like to thank Jen for sort of sending in a question. She said, asked me the question essentially along the lines, after having that big long video, and she watches this, is there any time that you would work for free, or is it always a definite no or a hard pass? And it's the answer to that is there is times that I will do it. It's just I want to make sure that in some way or form is going to benefit me, you know, to a large degree, in a sense, you know, equivalent to what it would be in pay. You know, a lot of times my recommendation is that sometimes, you know, people will come to you, they want stuff. A good example for me as a photographer is that musicians will come to me and they will ask for photography work. They won't have the money, they won't be able to afford it, all those kind of things. So what I like to do, because I make YouTube videos, because I do other things, I basically say, hey, you know, I can take photographs, you can use them as you will, and, you know, instead of paying, like, let's work out an exchange where I can use some of your music and utilize it in my videos, and, you know, that'll be good enough, because it provides value for both, you know, in a sense. They, if they had the money, would obviously be willing to pay for photography. I would obviously be willing to pay for music in circumstances. So, I mean, something like that where it's mutually beneficial. And of course, you know, you want to have it laid out sort of, you know, the agreement and all that kind of stuff, you know, in the lines like it would be unfair for me to sort of take, you know, a song and put it in a feature film that makes millions and millions of dollars, and, you know, that's kind of it. It's like, well, I gave you a few photos. Not really fair. Same extent, you know, not fair for them to take those photos, do mass productions of merch and make millions of dollars off that, you know, in that sort of exchange. So, I mean, there has to be well set out terms, I guess, or a well set out understanding in order for those things to happen. So, you know, that's one circumstance that I would personally do, and I've done it. You know, I've exchanged sort of music for, you know, photo work, and it works out for both parties. So, you know, that's one of the things there. Another way would do it is, and I mentioned this on the other stream, and I'm not sure if this was missed, if, you know, you get approached for charity work, what I like to do is actually charge and donate back. That way I get the maximum for my donation of time, because the way Canadian tax law is, if I just go and donate my time, it's essentially volunteer. I have nothing to write off, because as a photographer, especially in this day and age, there is no paper printing, there is no, you know, film development, there are no hard costs associated with it. There's a little bit of electricity and a little bit of digital stuff. It's basically you're handing over your time. So it's much more beneficial for me to charge a rate. You know, if I get paid, let's say $250, get the check, clear it, go write a check for $250, get a tax receipt, then I have a $250 tax write-off versus nothing at the end other than, you know, good warm feelings inside. So, you know, essentially that is another way that I would do it. And the other one is, because I'm not sure how old you are, Jen, or where you are in your, you know, sort of career and stuff like that, if you're young, if you're older, all that kind of stuff. But if you are young, up and coming out of school, all that kind of stuff, things like apprenticeships and internships for a period of time can be a great learning experience and get some real world experience in there. Although I will say that there are some places that sort of abuse those kind of programs. Definitely try to slot yourself into somewhere where you feel you want to work and you're going to benefit the most, where you're not just a sideline person, you know, photocopying and doing whatever and doing a bunch of menial tasks, where you're going to get a little bit dirty and hands-on, or at least assist directly and, you know, work with somebody that's willing to teach you. You know, I can speak from a tattooing experience. Sometimes, there's a lot of times guys will pull in apprenticeships and they just want somebody to clean toilets and answer the phones, and they're not really interested in teaching that person anything. It's a little bit of an abusive relationship in those regards. But if you have somebody that's willing to teach you the business and teach you the art and all that kind of stuff and invest time in you, then by all means, you know, in sort of traditional tattooing apprenticeships, you don't get paid. You basically gain the skills, and eventually you'll earn some money along the lines. You know, from that you'll start tattooing, you'll start, you know, making a little bit of money with your mentor taking the vast majority of stuff, and that can work all sorts of ways for you. Nick says, someone asks you to work for free, ask them if they will do their job for free. And it's very true as well. You know, it's a lot of times with those things, and I mean, we talked about a lot of this stuff the other day there, is that, at the end of the day, a lot of these people that ask for free stuff are getting paid themselves. So, it's kind of a little bit, of a big ask if you ask me to sort of ask somebody to work for free. If they're not willing to relinquish their wage in order to get things done, and you always kind of get those kind of excuses from people. You will get things, like, we didn't budget for this, or, we don't have the budget for this, or all that kind of stuff. But you'll go, to an event, and let's say you're taking photographs. Well, we don't have the budget to pay you as a photographer, but you go in there and, they have a gigantic spread for all their guests and all that kind of stuff. And they've paid somebody to come make an appearance, and that's why they need photographs and all. It's kind of disingenuous in, doing that. A lot of people will do that when they know they can get away with it, or they've done it several times. So, like I said, at a certain point, you've got to, kind of take a grounds, because, in all honesty, in business, if I don't charge and I'm free, it's very hard for me to increase. Same thing, if I completely undercharge, if I say I'm going to work for you for $5 an hour, which is well below minimum wage, the next time I come around and say, oh, okay, well, now that I've done it once, it's $150 an hour, chances are people are not going to make that jump. They're not going to make that jump with you. It's just that simple. It's a lot easier to come down a little bit if you have to, but it's very difficult to go the other way. And if you are going to do discount stuff, my advice is saying, my rate is this, but I like what you're doing. I want to work on this project. We can work together, all that kind of stuff. I can give you this, but that's the best I can do, kind of thing. So, Nick says, internship is great because you are getting real world skills in exchange for your time, as opposed to paying money to get skills, which is a flawed university system. I would agree. It is a really great way to do that. Again, there are some people that kind of abuse those kind of programs. And a lot of times you don't do things directly related to what you should be doing. Again, doing your research and finding out about a company, talking to people who have done internships with a photographer, or with a, video maker, or with a company, or, whatever the case may be. Always do your research, ask how that was, what they learned, all that kind of stuff, what they did. If it's just like I took the owner's dry cleaning to the store, and, I ran errands for his wife, it's probably not the best place in the world. But if it's like, I helped out, and, he got me to do certain things, he got me to shoot, and he would sometimes assist me and help me learn, and all those kind of things, kind of get that trade-off, then it's absolutely worth it. Booze Review says get contracts signed. Yeah, it's interesting. That's an interesting thing. Contracts are definitely one of the things that people seem to neglect the most. It's something that you should really be completely aware of and learn a lot about. I use basically. I had contracts made specifically for myself, and I utilized those. I got those drawn up, and I use those repeatedly. I will revisit them every once in a while, have them taken a look at, just to make sure that they are good. It sets out all the expectations. It avoids arguments at the end. And at the end of the day, you're going to, basically end up, knowing what's going to happen. And if things don't go your way, there's always sort of court remedies as well. And a contract makes that a lot simpler. Whereas if it's just kind of a handshake and an okay, it's, not really the best way to go about things. It's there to protect you. It's also there to protect the client. So, contracts are definitely a good thing. Nick says, tattoo apprentices in Japan, traditional, tabori, or otherwise, are like 6 years unpaid. And, it's 6 years, that's a long time to not be working. I'd be curious if they help out otherwise, whether they let them live at the studio, whether there's, they're fed, all those kind of things, kind of keep them as well, if that's the case. But I understand why they are a long time. I know my apprenticeship myself was well over a year before I was, sort of cut loose. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's so you learn the business inside and out, and you take the time and all that kind of stuff. And the reason it's unpaid, it's you know, it's like Nick alluded to earlier. It's like university system is sometimes flawed. Is like you go and learn, and then you go, but you don't have any experience. So I mean, it's like you're relearning. You know, the tattoo business. It's typically, if you have a good mentor, they will teach you the business from the ground up. So you will learn how to run a shop, to advertising, to getting clients, to maintaining clients, to the actual physical tattooing part of things, and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, it's, you know, they will, in a lot of cases, like some seriously old school stuff, they would teach you to draw, you know, all that kind of stuff. They would, you know, a lot of time and effort is invested in you as an apprentice. And that's why it is essentially free. I know in this day and age that a lot of people have, you know, because of just the way things have changed, will often charge $5,000-$10,000 for an apprenticeship, and whether you make it or not, they don't care. They actually charge you to be there, which I don't like, to be honest, because a lot of times I feel that there are cash grabs, and, you know, tattoo schools are another thing that I just don't even want to sort of get into as a topic, but always very, very interesting. How much do lawyers cost? I'll jump back up. A good contract lawyer is worth his or her weight in gold to write a good, solid base contract for you. Absolutely. You know, it really depends. Lawyers aren't all created equally. You can easily spend, you know, $200 to $250 an hour for these guys to write up stuff. But again, you know, it's good to have that base. It's there for your legal protection, you know, and basically they will give you it, so it's basically idiot proof. It's just inserting names, dating it, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes they're good to utilize if it's a very specific contract outlining specific things, and if it's a very lucrative contract as well, sometimes it's good to just get the lawyer to peruse and take it over, and obviously you pay them their hourly rate for that. But I mean, you know, lawyers are again, you know, not all created the same. There are guys that, you know, do strictly things like divorce law, copyright law, you know, all that kind of stuff. I know that there are a ton of basically law firms where they'll have people that, you know, basically specialize in everything. You know, there are guys that specialize just in defending in court. So, I mean, finding that lawyer that works for you is probably the best thing. I mean, me, myself, I have had the same, you know, lawyer for a very, 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 very long time. So, you know, it's been nothing but good. Nick says, one of my buddies in Japan, a tattooer, was homeless for the last 2.5 years of his apprenticeship. He's American. That's crazy. That they would just let him kind of be homeless at that point. But I mean, sometimes it just depends on how much you want it. You know, it's if you know it's going to take you 6 years, I guess it's basically, you know, getting your foot in the door. I mean, that's the other thing is too, I mean, to be honest with tattooing, to get a tattoo apprenticeship is not the easiest thing in the world. You get asked all the time. You just tell people to basically go pound sand. You get very particular. I have had apprentices, I'm done with you, and that's kind of it. And they've invested, you know, sometimes 3-6 months, you know, close to a year, and it's just like cut them loose, and it's like, well, whatever, you know. There's, you know, tattooing again is an interesting subculture in how it sort of goes about things. So I mean, I could probably talk hours and hours about that, you know, and I'm sure somebody somewhere would love to hear it. Like I said, you know, once you've got your foot in the door, you just got to work your balls off until the point that you're able to tattoo, make some money, and you're cut loose. And then at that point, you're generally probably going to do okay, because it's a skill that will last you a lifetime. Typically, the apprentice is going to be a Japanese person who lives at home with their parents until into their 30s. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Japanese culture plays a big role in how that thing works out there. He was an exception, as he is an American, had no family there. He did what he had to do. And I'm hoping that at the end of the day with your story there, Nick, that he got where he wanted to be, you know, and obviously a very trying time. But, you know, to be honest, if it was here and that was a circumstance, I would appreciate how hard that person was working, I would appreciate as their mentor, knowing that they want to work that hard, that this is what they want to do, what they want to be passionate about, and that, you know, I could feel pretty good that they are going to be successful because they're not willing to give up just because it got hard. You know, tattooing is a very, very mental thing. You know, when you are tattooing on somebody's skin, there is not a lot of room for making errors. Errors are not anything that any tattooist wants to do because it's not like you can go back and erase. So, you know, somebody that's driven like that is something that you want to see. And a lot of people, you know, if it's, you know, it's too easy, you know, they'll ultimately fail. I know a lot of people that have apprentices in the business, eventually they just don't work out because they don't want it that much, or they, you know, it takes too long, or all those kind of things. And I can say this honestly, in North America, people are very, very, very impatient about getting to the finish line. They're not really necessarily willing to sort of slug it out in the trenches. It's all about instant gratification. I think it says something about how, you know, sort of our society and culture has evolved throughout time, and that, you know, we sort of need that MTV immediate gratification, that YouTube gratification, which I'd say is even worse than sort of the MTV generation, Much Music generation. So very interesting in those regards. Nick says, +1 on the lawyer. They all cost different rates. Hello, JM. Thanks for tuning in. He's hella successful now. He has his own shop, art studio, and bar. He's killing it, which is super awesome. But again, you know, he put in the time, and ultimately at the end, you know, that passion obviously has helped propel him to that point. So I'm always glad to hear sort of, you know, stories like that at the end of the day. And I mean, in all honesty, that maintains a strong, heavy tattoo tradition, you know, and moving forward, you know, if he ever apprentices anybody to work underneath him, you know, I am positive that he will generate some fantastic artists, because he knows what it's like to put in the hard work, and it wasn't just handed to him, and he had to work and fight for it. And at the end of the day, he will produce, you know, phenomenal artists as well. It's funny, he does what he wants now, doesn't even do traditional Japanese anymore. Yeah, you know, it's tattooing's an interesting thing, because, you know, if you would ask what would be tattooed in the 80s, it would be a Tasmanian devil with a beer stein saying "let's party." Then it changed to, you know, all sorts of stuff like, you know, birds flying off of, you know, dandelions, or birds flying off infinity symbols, to, you know, a lot of stuff that becomes watercolor. So I mean, tattoo trends sort of change. Having a strong basis and understanding of traditional Japanese tattooing, though, is very, very valuable as far as I'm concerned, because I mean, there's a lot of people that do Japanese stuff that don't know what they're doing, and it looks awful. You know, again, I can talk about tattooing and traditional stuff. I mean, you can't see it, but this bookcase, the whole lower level is basically all art books, tattoo books, you know, sketch books, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, there you go. Nick says you can find him on Instagram, Hori Benny. I will definitely check that out. It's funny. What he wants now, he doesn't even... Okay, I already read that comment. So there you go. That's kind of all I have for you guys for the stream. If you do have any questions, do throw them in the comments. If you are here, say here, and I will give you an opportunity to spin the wheel, win a couple of great prizes from guys that have been nice enough to contribute stuff to the wheel for the daily show. So, like I said earlier in the stream, unfortunately, you know, YouTube is being, as Philip DeFranco says, that angry, drunk stepdad that's just not making any sense. So they're going about changing, you know, people's thumbnails. But again, at the end of the day, you know, I think, you know, like Nick was indicating, it is probably more to do along the lines with getting things like clickbait things out of the way. So, you know, maybe if it's just a low click or high click-through percentage and a low watch time, maybe that's something that they're going to look to work into the algorithm. That's purely speculation. But Dan is here, so he will get to spin the wheel. We've got a couple great prizes on there. So the wheel is brought to us, as always, by The Path Less Traveled. Hopefully they've got a hold of you, Dan. I did pass on your email. I know you've won it before. So Dan will have the opportunity to win here. That skinny little blue thing that the ticker is right beside, that is a prize from Reviewy McReviewface. He has offered up a custom commission. If you want to see the kind of work that Reviewy does, his links to his channel is below, and all his thumbnails are custom drawn. They are super stylistic and super cool, so he's basically offered that service for one of those. So best of luck, Dan, and we will spin that wheel. And sorry, not today. Unfortunately, the wheel has not been favorable for a little bit there, as I accidentally spin it a second time. But thanks again for tuning in, guys. Remember to like, comments, subscribe, share the stream, all that kind of good stuff. Tomorrow is Friday, so of course tomorrow will be the last stream of the week. If you have any questions, there's things that you want to discuss during that episode, by all means, shoot me a note on Twitter at Pain Inc. I'm more than happy to discuss whatever you want, and of course, we will see what kind of day the day will bring us, and see how much day drinking YouTube has been done, and if anything interesting comes out of that. And of course, I'm sort of expecting that at some point, hopefully tomorrow I get to tell you guys that the channel has been monetized, but we're not 100% sure. There's only 2 days left. I'm not sure if these guys work on Saturdays or not. Who knows with YouTube? It might be a 7-day-a-week operation kind of deal, but here's keeping my fingers crossed. I will keep you guys absolutely posted. And until next time, see ya.